to share a visual and demonstrative way of learning and all the systems that were in place that were dismembered over time. Number one, the power shift, Eurocentric domination. There was an interruption in the way of being that was grounded in spirituality and connection to Mother Earth and the web of life. There were opposing worldviews and values, from a shared communal living to an individualistic hierarchy. There began the attacking of the tribal system. Number two, erosion of identity and belief. There was the prohibition of sun dances, the outlawing of ceremonies. The Eurocentric view viewed these practices as pagan, and the people were forced to go into hiding. There was an interruption of traditional roles where matriarchal societies existed. To trade, women had to hand over their trade negotiations to the men as the settlers would not deal with them. There was the shift from communal extended family to nuclear families. Number three, land dislocation. There was the restriction of traditional use of land, the limits placed on buffalo hunting, rationing of food supply, taking prime land for resource development, and displacing communities to unfavorable grounds. There was the treaties, the negotiations, and settlements that continue into today. Canada adapts the Indian Act, which gives the Department of Indian Affairs complete control of the personal, political, social, and economic life of Aboriginal people. Number four, land imprisonment. This came to be with the reserve system. There was the pass permit placed in 1875, where people had to receive permission to be able to travel off the reserve. Indian agents were in place and acted as gatekeepers for government-imposed pass and permit. The Crown defines itself as the Indian protector. Number five, Christianize, civilize, and assimilate. Taming the savage. Residential school had over 80,000 attended, according to the Aboriginal Affairs and Northern Development. There was the 60s scoop. Department of Indian Affairs states that 11,132 Aboriginal children were placed for adoption outside of their own family unit to homes as far away as into the United States and abroad. It is expected this number is an understatement. The idea or the thinking at the time was kill the Indian in the child. Number six, residential schools and child welfare. There are more children currently in child welfare care today than at the height of the residential schools. Many children never returned from Indian residential schools. Some died and were placed in unmarked graves. There was a complete disconnection from one generation to the next, which is seen today through intergenerational trauma. Number seven, language silencing. There is the banning of the language in residential schools. There was punishment placed upon those if they used or were caught using the language. Families no longer able to communicate with each other. Parents to children were disconnected. Many turned to drugs and alcohol and violence as a means to cope. The ways of being were forgotten and language is lost to many. Number eight, power over and conditional rights. Canada adopts the Indian Act, which gives the Department of Indian Affairs complete control over the personal, social, political, and economic life of Aboriginal people. There is the creation of status membership. Aboriginal men and women were not entitled the right to vote until 1960. There was a loss of status based on gender, the loss of matrimonial rights and status. Number nine, the hidden truth. Canadian history is written and taught from a settler's perspective, based on discovery, settlement, advancement, and progress. The truth of First Nation is often silenced and hidden in the shadows of the state. Number 10, genocide. Smallpox and other diseases had a devastating toll on the Indian population. Eventually, waves of epidemics decimated 95% of the First Nations population. 500 years of colonization, assimilation, legislation, legalizing oppressive acts. The oppressed become the oppressors, which is seen today in lateral violence. The last phase of genocide is when the initiators step back, wipe their hands and say, look at what these people are doing to themselves. In the most known statement made by Duncan Campbell Scott, which is the Minister of Indian Affairs, in 1893 and 1932, the objective at the time was to continue these processes until there is not a single Indian in Canada.
So before we go any further, I just want to check in with Minnie under all these layers of cloth. Are you doing okay, Minnie? So as it's pretty hard to do 500-year history in a short little time, hey? So we had to pick out different things that really stood out to each of us for different reasons. There's so much more trauma that has happened over the course of history. But these are some really major points that we thought were really important to talk about. And as each pole was dismembered from a way of being, there was a layer of darkness that came over, that blanketed over people and blanketed over the country, really, hey? And as each pole went, you can imagine, how does it feel there, Minnie? She's hot. But each layer of darkness is trauma. And over the years, that's intergenerational trauma, hey? And that weight is being carried, and that darkness is surrounding and all-encompassing. Imagine having to wake up every day and walk with these layers of darkness and trauma and suffering. And trauma is a breach of boundaries. And when that happens, our spirit, the very essence of who we are as a person, as a human being, and our spirit together gets shooken up, right? It gets shooken up. So when I did this in Ottawa, everybody was like, oh my God, she must be nervous. But it's like that. Our body is a vessel, and emotion and trauma is energy. And when that happens, we get shaken up, our very essence gets shaken. And so what would happen right now if I was to open this pop bottle? Should we try it? No. That's what happens, and that's where we're at. We're at that point in time in history where all of us are like walking around like this, right? And we're just expected to just get over it. Is that really gonna happen? Is that really realistic? Absolutely not. We have to slowly open and release, right? And we have to slowly bring these poles back and remember those ways. It's taken 500 years. Hopefully it won't take quite as long to bring those things back, and it's not, right? But we have to release that slowly and work together. It's not, oh, those people have to those people have to get better. Absolutely not. We have to do it together as a community. It's not like this. It's not like we're gonna say, okay, settlers, out you go. Right? We're here. Canada is one of the most unique places in the world because colonizers aren't getting up and leaving. Right? They're not just gonna leave the country and wash their hands. We have to do this together, which means we have to learn together. We have to heal together. We have to do the work together. We have to take action together. We are what we know, but we also are what we don't know. And over the course of our educational experience in Western systems, don't give the whole story. So we don't know a lot of things that we really, really should. So we need to learn together and unlearn together as well. Okay? So it's going to be a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. One of the most amazing and important things is you'll see that there's 3 poles left. Colonization has not completely destroyed Indigenous people in this country. And Vanessa's going to talk a little bit more about that.